Hello everyone, I hope that you are doing well. So without wasting any time, let's move to the newspaper. First we will identify the important news and then we'll move on to the analysis section. So this is Monday, April 4, 2022, The Hindu Daily Edition. Fine, we'll be analyzing the most important news. First we'll identify them and then we'll go on analyzing them with exam point of view. Fine. So no trust vote dismissed, Imran gets Pak parliament dissolved. Okay, so Pakistan is still disturbed. Let's see what happens. All ministers quit in Sri Lanka in this emergency times. Sri Lanka is also unstable, so two of our neighbors are unstable. Okay. WHO pauses co-vaccine supply via union bodies. Now we have to see why this has happened. Good exports up by 43%. Okay, now there is nothing else here. Okay. Let's see, no registration of old petrol, diesel vehicle. Nothing here. Nothing here. Okay, now let's see here. No, nothing on. Yes, there is a one news here. Another fire breaks out at Sariska. Okay, so let's see. There is nothing much here. Let's see. There is nothing here. Yes, a Ukraine peace plan is possible. Okay, we'll see what it is here. For a full repeal, the relaxation of. Okay, ASSPA, it is related to AFSPA. We'll see it. A far-reaching verdict that ends the regressive expectation. Pronouncing the end of marital rape exception, Karnataka High Court had delivered a nuanced judgment. This marital rape thing now and then appears. We'll give it a read today. We'll see what Karnataka judgment is there all about. Life spending, the center must crank up capital spending if it wants to stoke the economy. Leave it. Playing the strategic autonomy game, New Delhi should play its cast extremely well right now to invest in future geopolitics dividend. Making groundwater visible. Now this is really important. This is in respect to what? This is okay with respect to Russia. No need to read it. It will be there in. Okay, now text and context with the Chandigarh question. We'll give reading to the gist only. The key takeaways from UNEP report on noise pollution, very important. Pollution, that to noise, very less articles appear on these things. NFC technology for instant payments. Okay, we'll give it a read today. What it is. Express train delays, what marshal against army captain begins. UCC debate gets momentum. Just know what is UCC. There is nothing on this. India and Mexico have different way to arrive at same point on Russia. Okay, the main objective is to not to corner Russia but to avoid escalation of conflict in Ukraine to find out a political solution, says Mexico foreign minister. Okay. RSS chief says pundits will return to Kashmir with security guarantees. Okay. Police whisk away 148 persons partying midnight in Hyderabad. No need. First case of infection from India, diabetes medication in India. Nothing new. UN chief names an Indian in climate team. We'll just see what it is. Not very important, but we have to know this. 40 chulas damage in Jagannath temple. Okay. Now let's move forward. Ukraine calls Bucha killing a massacre. Imran Khan guilty of high treason, says Nawaz Sharif. In major breakthrough, South Sudan reveals a SEAL security pact, from which we'll just give it a brief reading what it is. Talk of precision strike enrages North Korea. Spate of weapon tested by Pyongyang has heightened the tension with Seoul. Okay. Taliban ordered ban on poppy cultivation. Really? Then how will their economy run? As per the decree, crop will be destroyed and offenders will be tried under Sharia law. IPC report going down to the wire. Okay. PM Abram sect 4 terms. Okay. Where to invest? Fine. Okay. So Australia are the new Women World Cup winner, right? Look at the shot she is playing. How perfect it is. Now one more defeat for Super Kings. And I think they are at the last now. Let's see. No, they are at second last. Okay. There is nothing else here. So with this, we complete identification of news. Now we move on to the analysis of news. So WHO pauses Covaxin supply via UN bodies. Bharat Biotech to upgrade facility. Okay, what it is? The World Health Organization has suspended supply of Covaxin Bharat Biotech COVID-19 vaccine through UN agencies to allow the manufacturer to upgrade its facility and address deficiency. Okay, so why has it been stopped? So that the manufacturer can upgrade its facility and address any deficiencies which has been found there. WHO statement on Saturday said that suspension was in response to post-EUL, post-emergency use authorization inspection from March 14 to 22, and the need to conduct upgradation to address GMP, good manufacturing practices. Okay, so to upgrade to address the GMP, this pause has been done. In April, one statement by Biotech said it was committed to implementing facilities upgrade. Okay, fine. So this was the reason. I was afraid of something else. Okay, now let's move. There was a news regarding Sariska, right? Maybe on no. There was something. Well, yes, another fire breaks out at Sariska. Another wildfire breakout in forest of Sariska Tiger Reserve on Saturday evening. Alwar Police Control Room said that the fire has broken in Tehla area. Two-state disaster response force team has rushed to the stop. Okay, fine. Sariska is in TR. Sariska Tiger Reserve is in Rajasthan, Alwar district. Okay. So we'll be doing the editorial at last. First, let us analyze the most important news. Uniform Civil Code, Article 44. Fine. It is while the BJP is weighing the political stakes, it has issued a renewed push in Supreme Court. Okay. The UCC means formulation of one law to be made applicable to all religious communities in matters such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption. Fine. So this is the Uniform Civil Code. So this code will be related to civil matters. In criminal part, we have already IPC, right? Indian Penal Code. Fine. And after that, if anything else is there, yes. UN Chief names Indian in climate team. Anubha Ghosh, CEO of Delhi-based Council for Energy, Environment and Water, has been appointed as member of high-level group by United Nations Secretary General to bolster actions against global climate warming. Mr. Ghosh is among 3 Asians and the only South Asian serving the expert group. Fine. Okay, let's move further. Ukraine calls Bucha killing. Okay, there is nothing there. In a major breakthrough, South Sudan revive SEAL security pact. Let's see. In what has been hailed as a major breakthrough, South Sudan rival leaders sealed an agreement on Sunday on key military provisions of the shuttering peace. Okay, fine. It is their internal politics. Just know where is South Sudan. Okay. Now let's move. Now Taliban orders ban on poppy cultivation. I don't understand how their economy will run, because it is part of the Golden Crescent. Taliban announced on Sunday on ban on cultivation of narcotics in Afghanistan, world's biggest opium producer. What I said, So it has ban on narcotics by the country which itself is a world biggest opium producer, right? Fine. Let's see. IPCC reports talk going down to the wire. Emerging economies insist that the right to development must be recognized. Negotiations between scientists and government over a key United Nations climate report was going down the wire on Sunday, as officials from major emerging economies insisted that it should recognize the right to develop. Okay, the latest report by IPCC, a UN-backed body, is meant to show the path by which the world can stay within the temperature limits agreed in 2015 Paris Accord. The agreement aims to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius in this century. Okay, but with temperature already up by 1 degree Celsius than the pre-industrial baseline, many experts say that only possible with drastic cuts to greenhouse gas emission. The closed-door meeting was meant to wrap on the Friday so that the report could be presented publicly on Monday, but several observers said that the talks were still far from finished with less than 24 hours to go before publication deadline. Over 70% scientists say that on climate scientists say that about 70% of the text has so far been agreed, and there was still hope of negotiation might finish on Sunday. India emerged as a key voice pushing for recognition in the report that the developing countries have contributed to far smaller share of carbon dioxide emission already in atmosphere than industrialized nation. Okay, so we have contributed less carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas than the industrialized nation. Obviously they have industrialized themselves, and from that time only they are producing this carbon and these greenhouse gases. Fine. Therefore India should not be required to make the same step cut, and this makes the fact that India should not be pressurized or ordered, or India has no obligation for cutting down on its requirement. India, which is heavily dependent on coal, also wants poor countries to receive significant more financial support to cope with climate change and make transition to low carbon economy. Other such oil exporters, Saudi Arabia, argue that fossil fuel will still be needed for decades to come, and phasing out them too quickly could hurt the world poorest. All are right at their point, but still, in my opinion, not only we, the entire globe should think about it and must act. Okay, developing countries do need their share of utility of carbon space so that they can develop. Developed country has already developed, so they can help in technology development that would itself lead to less utilization of such fuels, and pollutions can be controlled, right? So the key here, in my opinion, is technological development instead of curving things to 1.5 degrees Celsius with respect to pre-industrial level, because curving things don't create alternatives. Alternatives are only created by what? By willfully creating them, right? Okay, nothing on this page, and then comes the sports page. So from here we have analyzed all the important news. Now we go to the editorial analysis. Okay, now we'll see this article first. For a full repeal, the relaxation of AFSPA is welcome, but the demand for full repeal should be considered. Okay, so recently Home Ministry has said that AFSPA has been relaxed in parts of Nagaland and in parts of Northeast, including Nagaland. So this is a welcome decision. Yes, this is actually a welcome decision. This will deepen the democracy in the country, but also Center may consider to fully repeal it. Now let's see what the author wants to say. In what is clearly not for vociferous demand for repeal of AFSPA from several states in Northeast, especially after 13 in Moon district killings last year December, Union Home Ministry has decided to considerably reduce the numbers of disturbed area. Okay, so who decides that? That is decided by Union Home Ministry. Under the Act in 3 states, the order from April 1 is applicable to 6 months. In Nagaland, while AFSPA was removed from jurisdiction of 15 police stations in 7 districts, it remains in place in 57 police stations in 13 districts. Okay, the relaxation has been removed entirely from 23 districts and partially from 1 district, thus limiting its operation fully to 9 districts: Manipur, has also seen some decline. As things stand, government decision to relax, here it is, to relax the application of act in specific areas seems to stem from the reduction in violence and also administrative reason rather than response to burning question whether act is essential to security operations in the state which have experienced insurgencies of various degree in the past. So it is not that government has done this to get the popular support or to for another thing. It is just for the fact that violence has reduced there and other administrative reasons. While the piecemeal gesture would be welcomed by residents in the area, but it should but repeal of the act in full from the three states remain unfulfilled. Okay. Human rights organizations, civil society committee, including 5-member committee led by Supreme Court, have steadfastly called for its repeal. Okay, so many people have been calling for repeal of AFSPA. The committee in particular has suggested that the act has created the impression that people of Northeast were being targeted for hostile treatment or, instead of hostile treatment, and UAPA could instead be suitably amended to tackle terrorism. So it is saying, it is advising what? It is advising that there could be changes in UAPA to it could be suitably amended so that it can tackle terrorism, and AFSPA is not needed there. Okay, this can be a good alternative. We can write it in our answers as well. The Supreme Court appointed Justice N. Santosh Hegde in Hegde committee in 2013 to investigate encounters killing in Manipur, suggested that act must be properly reviewed every 6 months to see if implementation is necessary, but extension of the purview of act have produced as routine affairs. Okay. In 2016, Supreme Court has also ruled that armed forces could not be immune from investigation for excesses committed during the discharge of their duty, even in disturbed area, in effect of circumscribing the condition in which the immunity is applied. These beg the question again: why should the act remain in statute? Okay, so the article questions the legitimacy of even existence of this act in the statute, because in this post-colonial era where India aspires to become world power, such act just dents our image. It leads to humanitarian crisis. Okay. A far-reaching verdict that ends regressive exceptions. Okay. In pronouncing the end of marital rape exception, the Karnataka High Court has delivered a nuanced judgment. And who is this author? The author is Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. Let's give it a read, very brief read, because things like this never comes in examination. It may come, but in general it don't come. Okay, so challenging in last several months, challenging the constitutionality of marital rape exception in Article 375 of IPC has gripped the Delhi High Court. The judgment is in this petition is still awaited one clean scoop. In one clean scoop, Justice M. Naga Prasanna of Karnataka High Court on 23rd March in the case of Rishikesh Sahu versus State of Karnataka pronounced the end of marital rape exception. Okay, so Karnataka High Court has done what? It has pronounced the end of marital rape exception. So when we write the point about marital rape, look, direct question on marital rape is not expected. Okay, the more broader questions will come on women, how ways of women emancipation, or how women can be made more free and all those kind of things. So in that, if we write about marital rape, then this case study of Karnataka High Court decision may be written. It depends upon the context, right? Background it has given: the outcome of judicial proceedings are almost shaped by the cases in which one comes before the court. Fine. The police registered her complaint. So it is given that how this has happened, what was the thing, what was the case. Okay, we won't be reading that, irrelevant from our exam point of view. Look, we should know what to read and what not to read. Some things are irrelevant from our exam point of view. If you want to read for a story's sake, it's okay, but we are here on a serious business. We are doing what? We are doing analysis with respect to examination only. So anything that is not related to examination directly or indirectly, we won't be going into it, right? So roots of principle, this could be important. The exception to marital rape in common law was due to dictum of Chief Justice Matthew Hale of Britain in 1736, where he stated, "But the husband cannot be guilty of a rape committed by himself upon his lawful wife, for by their mutual matrimonial consent and contract the wife had given up herself in the kind unto her husband which she cannot react. The concept that marriage a woman gives up her body to husband was accepted as enduring principle of common law. Now this is an important point. This is the concept behind that made women that caged women, right? The concept that by marriage a woman has given up her body to the husband was accepted as enduring principle of common law. Fine. So common law believes that what that woman after marriage gives up her body to husband, due to which husband could not be guilty of raping his wife. This was therefore translated into criminal code, including IPC, which India adopted. This principle has now been completely abolished. In United Kingdom in 1991, the exception to marital rape was done away. Okay, in the case of R versus R, the House of Lords held that where the common law rules no longer even remotely represents what is true position of a wife in present day society, the duty of the court is to take a step and alter the rule. The court held that husband immunity as expounded by the Chief Justice has no longer exist, and look the view that time has arrived when law should be declared that a rapist remains a rapist subject to criminal law. Okay, should declare time has arrived that when the law should declare that a rapist remains rapist subject to criminal law irrespective of his relationship with the victim. So this could also be written. This is also a good line. It held that it was duty of the court to remove the common law friction which had become anachronistic and offensive, and that there was no jurisdiction for martial exemption in rape. In 1991, more than 30 years in court, the Karnataka High Court took a similar view of his duties and all those things, and held that exception of martial rape under Article 375 is regressive, wherein woman is treated as subordinate to husband and against the constitutional guarantees of equality. Our courts have now truly propounded a death knell of martial rape exceptions. Yes, this is a very good decision by Karnataka High Court. I also support it. Why? Because marriage is a relationship of equals. Nobody is subordinate to anyone else. Not only women but male also should have this right against martial rape, that if a man says no, if the male person says no, if the male partner says no, it is a no. If the female partner says no, it is a no. It should be about mutual consent, and this line the should declare that a rapist remains a rapist subject to criminal law irrespective of his relationship with victim. Okay, this concept is a very true replacement for the concept that during a marriage woman gave up her body to the husband. Okay, so let's move to the next editorial, the longer one. You know who M.K. Narayana is? Is a former director of IB, a former national security advisor, and former governor of West Bengal. He writes very good articles. Okay, I love his articles. Okay, even if it does not fully meet the requirement of either Moscow or Kiev, it would at least prevent a wider conflagration. Now, I have not read the article right now, but in my opinion, this article should deal with a proper peace plan that he is proposing. Okay, let's see. So several weeks into Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has become a virtual proxy war with US and NATO providing military assistance to Ukraine to persist in fight against Russia, the fog of war has not lifted. Some direct talks between Russia and Ukraine representatives have taken place, but these have been of little avail. At this point, it seems unlikely to end the ongoing humanitarian disaster in the site. Yes, he is correct. At this point, we do not see the end of this ongoing war, which is causing a lot of humanitarian disaster. Boost for the US. It is increasingly evident that this war is a war that nobody wants, at least all of Ukrainians or even Russians. Yet one seems to be masking the right move to end the conflict. Okay, for NATO and its ally in Europe, it is not a conflict they wish to wage at this time. For US, however, the unity displayed by NATO currently has been major boost. Okay, reinforcing its belief that European security is inextricably linked to strong and united NATO. Whether with the help of NATO the US has succeeded in isolating Russia and Europe is still an open question. Fine. No, look, he's very correct here. Why is correct? Because Russia provides one very important thing to Europe, and that is energy. With the geography of Europe, where winters are harsh and summers are also harsh in that context, energy is one of the main demand of European countries. Okay, and they take it from Russia. Very cheap energy source Russia is there. Therefore, isolating Russia directly based on sanctions would lead to more damaging of European nations than Russia. Fine. Russia is a producer. It can find new market. India and China, the two populous countries, are it's one of can become its market, and it is their market, right? But the European counterparts, if they don't purchase, then they are losing a important player, a important key energy holder partner, right? So this is why they cannot, till now, NATO has not succeeded in isolating Russia. In meantime, the carnage in Ukraine continues. Ukraine President Zelensky, for his part, might claim that he is ready to discuss neutrality. Russia, even as Russia, while continuing with its military operation, has been sending out feelers that it could consider limiting the conflict. However, in effect, the two antagonists appear to be taking part rather than to one another. However, in effect, the two antagonists appears to be taking part to be talking past rather than to one another. Okay. What is more unfortunate is that the world is standing by, allowing the conflict to continue. Yes, this is very unfortunate. The world is standing by and allowing the world conflict to continue. But the question is again, should we go for the ethics or should we go for national interest? And in this dog eating dog world, national interest, national security always and has always and will always go ahead of, will be taken ahead of peace and harmony. Cut. With West encouraging rather than restraining Mr. Zelensky from baiting Russian President Vladimir Putin, neither the United Nations nor any major countries have seriously explored any peace moves, nor followed up what Mr. Zelensky means when he says that he is ready to discuss neutrality. To an outsider, it looks like if Ukraine has become a pawn in the power game between West and Russia. Yes, it has become a pawn, right? Because what is happening? This is Ukraine. No, look. This is Ukraine, this is Russia. Russia has its own stockpile of weapons, fine. Ukraine is being given weapons and they are fighting. So actually it is a fight between NATO and Russia, and Ukraine is just a battleground. So all the burn of the war are being faced by Ukraine, and both Russia and NATO countries are safe. Seize the chance. If indeed the world is approaching to a tripping point, what is needed is less, not more, of a kind of grand standing employed by Mr. Zelensky, occasionally laced with a demand for direct talk with Mr. Putin, or a charade of negotiations that currently taking place between Ukraine and Russian negotiators. It may be too much to expect the Russian side to demonstrate proper contriteness for unfortunate killing of thousands of civilians, but pressure should be brought on Russia to try and enter into more realistic negotiations. So it is a well-known fact that Russia won't say sorry for killing so many thousands of civilians, but the world should pressurize Russia to at least get into negotiation with Ukraine. The West also need to play a more active role and try to devise a peace plan. So West should also try to devise a peace plan talking advantage of occasional statement made by both sides about their willingness to halt the conflict. Okay, so they should take advantage, the West should take advantage and devise a peace plan so that both side when they say that they are willing to talk and willing to halt the conflict, so this peace plan should work out there, and this conflict, this humanitarian disaster can be stopped. The crying need today is for a peace plan which, even if it does not fully satisfy the requirement of both of the countries and obliquely that of US and West, it will at least ensure a cessation of hostility and prevent the conflict from becoming further enlarged. Okay, so today we need a peace plan that can at least for the moment stop this humanitarian disaster, this conflict, although it may not be able to satisfy all the parties to it, that is Ukraine, Russia, NATO and the West. Still it will at least be able to stop this humanitarian disaster. It should not be proved too difficult or beyond a realm of possibility to arrive at a peace arrangement or devise a plan that would accommodate Ukraine's profound need for neutrality, with or without assured guarantees, and Russia's concern about further eastward push of NATO that implicitly threatens Russian security, right? Working out an arrangement down to the smallest detail would, however, entail a great deal of subtle diplomacy. Now, what is this subtle diplomacy? We have to see. By interlocutors acceptable to both Russia and Ukraine. Let us see first subtle diplomacy, what it is. Negotiation conducted by a mediator who travels between two or more parties that are reluctant to hold discussions. Okay, it is just a kind of interlocutor or mediator, right, who have necessary gravitas to undertake such a task. Speed is of essence, as with such passing day, the risk of wider conflagration increases, right? So speed is very important in this shuttle democracy and shuttle diplomacy, because with each passing day, what is happening, that many people are killed, the disaster is growing very fast. So it is time now to get a plan on the table and agreed by all the partners, although it may not satisfy everyone in every sphere, right? The world is not bereft of individual who can play a critical role as interlocutor at this time, but it demands both honesty and purpose and the will to overcome the odd. So world has people who can do this, but it demands what? It demands honesty of purpose and the will to overcome this odd. The use of sanction, to begin with, the the West should reconsider its current obsessions with imposing additional sanctions on Russia, in that exception that it would lead to collapse of Russia and the end of the regality of Mr. Putin. It must be argued that there is a greater merit in imposing economic sanctions on a country that is launching all out war. Yes, he is correct. There is a greater merit in imposing economic sanctions than any other sanctions on a country that is violating international principles regarding war. But the West should also consider its position on imposing new sanctions every other day on Russia, thinking that Russia will collapse. Instead of isolating and trying to collapse Russia, they should try to bring Russia and Ukraine on a table, discuss what is their problem. The policy of live and let live is better than policy of either with us or against us, right? Notwithstanding this, and despite the pressure that sanctions have put on Russian economy, the jury is still out on whether economic pain of this kind would lead to any country, at least in short and medium term, to alter its mindset. Iran is a classical instance. So these sanctions, although will lead to economic sanctions, will lead to what? Will lead to downfall in the economy. But will this downfall in the economy lead to change the mindset of the country? It is not directly related. We cannot say that every time the sanction is imposed, the mindset of the country will be changed. It is more related to the behavioral aspect of that country, right? So we see an example of Iran, that after so many sanctions also they kept on doing what they were doing, that is enriching uranium. Okay, so what was done then? JCPOA was signed. So similarly, we need here also something. In the meantime, several well-regarded economists has come out of their views regarding unintended consequence of the overuse of sanction. The refrain is that the overuse of economic weapon could reverse the process of globalization that allowed the modern world to prosper. Similarly concerned, so what will happen? The overuse of economic sanction could reverse the progress of globalization and lower the and that allowed the modern world to prosper. So globalization, which allowed this modern world to prosper, will go down in vain if there is overuse of sanction. Similar concern exists about the fragmentation of global payment situation. Obviously, now you are kicking some important payment, some important banks or financial institution out of the global payment system. That will cause an effect on global payment system as well, because all these financial institutions are more or less organically linked with each other. Okay, if one is damaged, it will damage the entire chain. Certain experts have again warned that sanctions regime placed on Russia, unless calibrated very carefully, could exacerbate food shortage in low-income countries. Obviously, it could exacerbate food shortage in low-income country. Why? Because low-income country won't be able to buy Russian food. In short period, the economic sanctions, while seemingly an excellent opinion, can also have deleterious consequences for much of the world. It would be interesting to speculate on some of the spillover effect of Russian-Ukraine conflict. Indisputably, Russia's inability to coerce Ukraine into submission within very short time frame has dented Russia's image and as also of its wanted military machines. While many explanations for Russia's slow advance in Ukraine may be forthcoming, what must have surprised, if not shocked, Russia is that 30-nation NATO should have displayed a degree of cohesion in the face of Russian onslaught. This would have been wake-up call for Russia and a clear boost for efforts of the West to contain what is perceived as Russian neo-imperialism. Okay, so it is, yes, Russia has been advancing very slow in Ukraine. Many reasons have been given for it, but one thing has surprised. Okay, Ukraine may be forthcoming. What must have surprised, if not shocked? Russia is that. What may have surprised Russia that the 30 nation NATO should have displayed this degree of cohesion in the face of Russian onslaught. This would have been a wake up call for Russia to clear the boost. Russia is that the 30 nation NATO should have displayed this degree of cohesion in the face of Russian onslaught. This would have been wake up call for Russia and a clear boost to efforts of the West to contain what is called or what is perceived as Russian new imperialism. Okay, what lies ahead? What is ahead for Russia? Mr. Putin's effort to correct history was triggered for Ukraine crisis. Was a trigger for Ukraine crisis. One that did not quite follow the script that he has hoped for. There could be similar and equally less palatable fallout for the West as well. More specifically, the US and it hopes to reclaim the global leadership. According to many analysts, one fallout of current conflict in Ukraine is likely to further cementing of already deepening Russia-China strategic relationship. Obviously, this is correct thing. Russia-China axis will deepen with this, which has been evident over past several months. The degree of unity displayed by West and the determination to stand together is expected to result in taking existing Russia-China relationship to next level. So, what is happening? Russia and China relationship is getting stronger, and it is more fueled by the increasing cohesion between West. So, more the West comes together, the more Russia and China axis becomes stronger. Okay, in response to that. Approximating to what existed prior to the Great Communist Divide in early 1960s. Some analysts even argued that a clue to this can be found in some of the Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent utterances, where he has talked of the need to revive the spirit of Korean War of 1950s. Several possibilities arise if Russia-West divide also crystallize out along the current line. Almost certainly, one will see a reshaping of world energy map. So, what will happen if the present if the present thing goes on? One will see reshaping of world energy map if current embargoes on Russia oil and gas were to continue. Oil flows to Europe would come mainly from West Asia and US. In turn, countries such as China and India may become major importers of crude from Russia. It is uncertain at the time whether it would be practicable proportion over the longer haul, but new permutations and combinations are certain to take place. Okay, so we are not sure that this thing will be practically continuing in future, but for now the changes in permutation and combinations have been initiated, right? India's stance next, even as China and Russia relations become further strengthened, the question before India would be how it should position itself. Till now, India has taken a consistent stand of not criticizing or condemning Russia on any account, including its invasion of Ukraine. This was largely based on India's long-term defense and other relationship with Russia. This could undergo challenges. One might also anticipate a further churn in politics of West Asia, where Abraham Accord in 2020 seemed to be a big certain degree of normalcy and stability. Iran posture to politics will also play an important role in shaping the politics of the region. One thought that cannot be dismissed as being entirely frivolous is whether repeated accusation leveled by the West against Mr. Putin of attempting to use nuclear weapon to devastate Ukraine are a prelude or certain reason or a curtain reason for experimentation. More importantly, the preparing the public to consider removing the current taboo regarding nuclear weapon. Okay, so this nuclear threat every time Russia is giving is actually becoming a prelude or a preparation ground for people to who feel ashamed and very ashamed of saying in the nuclear thing. They are actually being prepared to leave their shame and openly talk about using nuclears, right? For instance, it may not be too outlandish for both sides to use the minimized nukes with precision drone delivery mechanism. If Russia-Ukraine war were to persist, one could even emphasize the policy of use of micro-nuclear payloads mated to miniaturized precision delivery mechanism. So he's saying that if this war continues, then micro-nuclear attack with the drones is a possibility. One hopes that before this saner voices across the world will prepare the way for peace package in Ukraine. So before these things, this nuclear thing come into picture, the conflict will get over. This is what one should hope. Okay, so a very good article to explain what could be done, but still, as far as examination is concerned, I don't see it very important article with respect to prelims and mains. Yes, for interview it is a very important article. Okay, so we have done the editorial page. Now let's go on to the op-ed page. Okay, making underground water visible. What is this? The existing approach of dealing with surface water and underground water independently has severe limitations. Okay, so it is severe limitation means challenges will be there. What is the challenge of dealing with surface water and groundwater independently? The theme of this year World Water Day was groundwater, making the invisible visible. The primary focus is to draw attention to the role of groundwater in sanitation, water and sanitation system, agriculture, in ecosystem, climate change adaptation, etc. Groundwater helps reducing the risk of temporary water storage and caters to the need of arid and semi-arid region. But its value has not been fully recognized in policy making. While dependence on groundwater is increasing everywhere, there are serious issues in depletion of stored groundwater and deterioration in quality. High temperature and drought threatens water security, right? So what high temperature and drought threatens water security. Due to its high storage capacity, groundwater is more resilient to efforts of climate change than surface water. Due to its high storage capacity, groundwater is more resilient to efforts of climate change and surface water. The International Conference on Groundwater highlights the significance of groundwater in sustainable development, with annual groundwater extraction being about 250 billion cubic meter. India is among the largest user of groundwater in the world. Almost 89% of groundwater extracted is used for irrigation and rest for domestic and industrial use. So this is a good data. Actually we know this data, but still. Extracting value. According to Central Groundwater Board, the annual groundwater withdrawal is considered to be safe when extraction rate is limited below 70% of annual perishable recharge. Okay, so what is the safe value? It is when the extraction is below 70% of the annual replenished recharge. Available data indicates that the level extraction from the country in 2017 was 63% from 58% in 2004. However, the level varied across the region. Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi, Chandigarh, Himachal Pradesh and Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry have crossed the 70% mark. Okay, Niti Aayog has set up 70% extraction value as targeted to be achieved by 2030. Fine. Besides the high level extraction, quality is also an issue of concern. So second concern is quality. A quality wise safe district may be vulnerable due to deterioration in water quality. Fluoride, iron, salinity, nitrate and arsenic contaminations are major problem. Okay, so what are the major problem? Water quality में fluoride, iron, salinity, nitrate, arsenic contaminations are major problem. As many as 335 districts reported nitrate pollution compared to 109 in 2006. A high level nitrate affects human health. Source of nitrates obviously will be anthropogenic and depends upon local action. Biological contamination has also been reported from different parts of the country. Changing approaches. The existing approach of dealing with surface water and groundwater independently has severe limitations. As Mr. Mihir Shah committee, okay, which committee? Mihir Shah committee proposed, the Central Water Commission and Central Ground Water Board could have been united and the national water framework with integrated perspective developed. There is also a need to work out local level plan. There is also a need to work out local level plan covering water resources in all form: rainwater, surface water and soil water from the groundwater and resources used. These are all okay. Groundwater, surface water and the intervening landscape forms a part of matrix, and together with the verge of transition system they can continue the critical zone where most territorial life resides. Okay, re-establishing connection. Fine. Let's leave it. Re-establishing connections between surrounding surface and groundwater system, both governance and management, entails a local level approach that will involve revisiting the present groundwater estimation process large. So what it is saying, both for government and entails a local area approach, right? Linking aquifers with river basin, hydrogeomorphic analysis, factoring land use and human induced changes in the water system, linking cropping pattern and crop intensity with groundwater availability, aquifer type and present stage of groundwater extraction in farm level is imperative. At present there is energy subsidy for groundwater extraction, which with little regulation this encourages farmers to withdraw water at their will There is larger issue of ownership of community resource in this context, although the groundwater recharging taking place through the geohydrological processes and is not confined to administrative and or property boundaries. The landowner has exclusive right to groundwater available at the property. Okay, this is the problem. The landowner has exclusive right to groundwater available in the property. The community source thus turned into a private resource. This is the main problem. The water is the community source and it has turned into what? The private resource due to location of extraction site. Rearticulation of this legal framework for groundwater use gained relevance in this context. Okay, so deprivatization of groundwater, which is a community resource, is warranted. The new paradigm for groundwater management is a socio-ecological challenge. New paradigm is what? A socio-ecological challenge where localism matters. It warrants technical, economic, legal and governance remediation with a space for active public participation and community regulatory options to maintain the groundwater balance at a village or watershed level. Okay, so this is a paradigm shifting time. This paradigm of groundwater management is actually a socio-ecological challenge and where localism matters. Local support along with technological upgradations and other factors will lead to a better, and of course the policy factor will lead to a better groundwater management in India, right? A very good article. Many points are there which could be written in examination. Okay, text and context page. Chandigarh question. Let's read the gist. As per Punjab Reorganization Act 1966, Chandigarh was made a UT and joint capital of Haryana and Punjab with state asset divided between both states in the ratio 60:40. The lack of full rights to its capital remains a vexing issue for Punjab politics. The issue has come to light again following the central decision to amend the rules governing the function of Bhakra Vyas Management Board and to bring Chandigarh UT administrative employees under the central state rules. The latter move has been seen to affront the Punjab claim over Chandigarh. Okay, it is seen that by this Chandigarh would be out of Punjab's claim. Given its unique geographical location at intersection of three states, Chandigarh develops a unique cosmopolitanism and has become a magnet for youth across the northwestern region. City residents thus favor the status quo. Okay, Chandigarh is situated at the tri-junction of Haryana, Punjab and Delhi and Uttar Pradesh, you say. So what happens that it has developed as a cosmopolitan city and hence attracts a lot of youth, especially from northwestern India. Okay, so the residents there want themselves to be as it is in a status quo. But as far as examination is concerned, I don't see a direct question in mains. Yes, there could be a question in prelims regarding this Punjab Reorganization Act 1966, that when it was passed and what was its main provisions regarding Chandigarh and all those things. If it comes, it will come by making Chandigarh the statement. 2-3 statements will be there, right? The key takeaway from UNEP report on noise pollution. Let's see the gist first. The first chapter of February UNEP report compiles studies about noise level in several cities. Moradabad, okay, Indian cities mentioned in the list. 5 Indian cities mentioned in that list are Delhi, Jaipur, Kolkata, Asansol and Moradabad. Moradabad has never been suggested as an unusually noisy city. The author of that chapter said that the confusion stems from error in the bibliography. Okay, then this is a good thing. Moradabad is not noisy city. Adverse effect of noise pollution on public health range from mild and temporary distress to severe and chronic physical impairment. Okay, so adverse effect from noise pollution on public health range, it ranged from mild and temporary distress to severe and chronic physical impairment. Okay, from stress to impairment. Fine. So I think the gist is enough, but we'll give it a read, short read. Environment. Okay, the February report commissioned by UNEP on environment challenges posed by noise, wildfire and disruptions of biological rhythm of plant, animal and ecological cycle has become controversial on account of mention of a single city, Moradabad. Okay. What was the controversy? The first chapter report called Frontiers 2022, Noise, Blizzards and Mismatch, Deals with Noise. It compiles a study about noise level in several cities around the world and illustrates a subset of 61 cities ranging from and the range of decibel levels that they have been mentioned. Delhi, Jaipur, Kolkata, Asansol and Moradabad are 5 Indian cities mentioned in the list. Moradabad is in Uttar Pradesh, was shown having a decibel range of 29 to 114 at maximum value of 114. It was second most noisiest city in the list. The first was Dhaka, Bangladesh with maximum 119. While road traffic industry and high population density are well-known factors associated with high dB levels. Okay, this is a good thing. Road traffic, industry and high population density are factors associated with high dB level. The inclusion of Moradabad appears strange because similar studies in parts have never suggested to be an unusually noisy city. There was no mention of the city in any of the scientific report listed out by bibliography of the source. The pursuit of list of research article linking each city to scientific study undertaken to measure noise level pointed to the study environmental noise challenges and policies in low and middle income countries. South Florida General Health. This was authored by but surprisingly no reference of Muradabad. So the above document also had no reference of Muradabad. Fine. There was reference to noise level in Aurangabad, Chandigarh, Kolkata. Fine. So many studies have found the cities mentioned to be noisy except Muradabad. This was the first time Muradabad was there. So Muradabad is the second noisiest city. The author of the chapter, in response to the query from the Hindu, said that the confusion stemmed from errors in the bibliography. The actual study linked to Muradabad was assessment of noise level status in different area of Muradabad city. By Anvish Chauhan, the Graphic Era Hill University, Dehradun. Incidentally, this study was published in 2010 and is routine in many studies measuring noise levels involved in measurement in different parts of the city. The 114 measurement was the average of measurement reported from a factory in industrial zone. Aletta added that inferring Muradabad to be second noisiest city was incorrect because the list of cities whose values were illustrated were only indicative. The noise indicators that different study report included weren't necessary, consistent, harmonized, and it generally generated simply as example of spread noise values that different people have observed the different criteria over time. Fine. What are the measurement of noise? Why are the measurement of noise important? 2018 WHO guidelines established health protective recommendations for road traffic noise of 53 decibels. So 53 decibels, what is it there? Road traffic noise. The Frontiers report compile a host of evidence including the adverse effect of noise on public health, which ranges from mild temporary distress to severe and chronic physical impairment. Nighttime noise disturbs sleep and affect well-being of the. On the following day, estimated suggested that 22 million and 6.5 million people suffered from chronic noise annoyance. Fine. The elderly, pregnant women, and the shift worker are among the risk of noise-induced sleep disturbances. Noise-induced awakeness can trigger a range of physiological and psychological stress responses because of sleep is necessary for hormonal regulation and cardiovascular functioning. Traffic noise exposure are a risk factor for development of cardiovascular and metabolic disorders such as elevated blood pressure and arterial hypertension, coronary heart disease, etc. Long-term exposure to environmental noise contributes to 48,000 new cases of ischemic heart disease and causes 12,000 premature deaths annually in Europe. Fine. What is India doing about noise pollution? CPCB mandated to track noise pollution, set a standard as well as ensure the state unit the sources of excessive noise, and this could be a question of prelims. The agency has a manual monitoring system where sensors are installed in major cities, and few cities have facility to track the noise level in real time and all those things. CPCB also measure noise level before and after Diwali in major cities to publicize the impacts of firecracker. So not a very enriching article, but we must know that how things happen, right? So let's see this NFC technology. Near field communication is a short range wireless connectivity technology that allow NFC embedded device to communicate with each other and transfer information quickly, easily with a single touch. So this is a very old technology. NFC tech has a wide range of applications besides driving payment services. It is used in contactless banking cards to generate contactless ticket for public transport. Google Pay will now allow UPI account to payment just by tapping their NFC embedded Android smartphone on any Pine Lab Android POS system. This process will be much faster compared to scanning QR code and entering the UPI link to mobile number. So remember one thing: application of any of the emerging technology is not limited to any one field. It has a spillover effect, and it will spill over to other fields as well. Now the gist is more or less complete in itself. It is a short range wireless connectivity technology. Fine. And all those things. I don't think we must read this. There would be nothing but a repetition of this thing only. You give it a read and let me know if it is important to read it. If so, I'll do it in the next video, right? And after this, let's see. So with this, we come to the end of this today's newspaper analysis. So friends, I really hope that you like this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe our channel and share this video with your friend. Also, keep studying hard, keep following your dreams, and keep tuned to our channel. Comment below for any suggestion. Till then, goodbye, good luck, keep studying hard, and follow your dreams.